Welcome to another edition of the Mr. Therapist and the Counselor podcast. And today we have a really, really exciting guest, Danae, licensed marriage family therapist.
Happy to be here. Is that what you say, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to invite you to please subscribe, like our stuff, share it, and talk about us, man. Jesse O.
I was just liking things right now. Let's get the show going.
Let's get the show going. All right, so we're here. Danae, I love you, Danae. This is how we're starting. So.
In the intro, that you already said what she does, right?
Yeah, she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. You are licensed. You're still licensed, right?
I am still licensed. Yeah.
Usually, when we have a guest on, initially, it's like we'll do like a whole backstory of like how they met us. But Danae she gave us the two stories of the first time.
Want that
so we're not going to do that today.
No.
So, but what the reason I wanted Danae on as one of our first guests was like. She is like somebody like I like respect so much and I admire so much. Like when we worked together at one point in time in the field, like I know often I would go to gravitate to her desk and like she would just always be like a really safe spot for me. And she would tell me like what, she would be straight up with me. And I just was always so like appreciative of her. So I thought that like bringing her on here, I think that she could just have a lot of great conversation in the time that we have today. So
and I gotta double that. Like I admire you too, as a therapist, as a person. You were my boss at one point. That was really cool. You're the best boss I ever had.
Really, the best boss ever?
Yeah.
Jesse was also his boss at one point, right?
So I was the second best boss you've ever had.
Boss.
Okay,
Yeah,
good deal.
yeah.
So.
Damn.
Fighting words.
We'll talk about that later. Not at Pizza Port because I'm not going anymore. So,
oh God.
So today, I mean, there's a lot of things we could talk to Danae about. So,
Danae, one of the things I guess stands out first and foremost is you're a narrative therapist, which we don't have to get too much into.
Right.
But it's a kind of nice modality, and we're kind of talking a little bit about this idea within narrative, right? Where we could talk a little bit about clients, the way we impact clients and how we see clients.
Don't mind me. I was just breathing heavy into the microphone.
Yeah, Jesse was breathing in the mic. Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry.
And I have this prompt that says client as a guest. So I don't know. We can talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
What the hell is narrative therapy? I always say my favorite therapists are narrative therapy, and then they try to like explain it to somebody, and I'm like, I just really like people that do narrative. But like, how would you like describe narrative? Like,
what a question.
It is.
What a
it's
question.
a loaded question, right?
Yeah. I think it's okay, I have to gather my thoughts. Let me think here. I think the most important part about narrative is, for me, it's a curiosity. And so I think like therapists, we talk a lot about like, I'm going to be non-judgmental, which to me is kind of funny because how can you be non-judgmental? Yeah. Like that's just human nature. Like we judge. And so what I appreciate about narrative is it's a curiosity. So somebody might, I don't know, believe in something that maybe I don't believe in. And so it's not that I'm like, oh, I'm not going to judge them for that because that's a judgment in and of itself. Right. I'm saying I shouldn't judge them for that because something's wrong with it maybe. So yeah, versus coming at a place of curiosity. So tell me about that. How is that meaningful to you? What does that particular thing mean? And so to me, narrative is kind of, I guess, teasing apart the stories that create somebody, the identities that they're a part of, why that's significant to them, where it's come from, how it became important to them. I don't know. Is that an explanation?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it is. I like. It's interesting because we just had a guest recently on. I'm gonna pretend like it was weeks ago when we actually recorded it, like 30 minutes ago.
But
Randy was on here and he was talking about like, I changed my clothes for the podcast. Randy was talking about being not like he doesn't judge people, and I like very faith based. I get what he's saying, right? But I always think it's interesting when I'm running a group. And people are like, we're not judgmental. In my mind, initially, I'm like, bullshit. It's human nature to like feel something. And a lot of times, maybe it's just like a protective response. And that would be judgment.
There's like a negative connotation with the word judgment, right?
Yeah,
and what you're saying, though, is that like we all judge. It's a part of the human experience to judge.
Judging
and so
you right now.
You are judging me. I can feel
shirt.
it right now. Your eyes are. but it's like you're embracing that that part of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's this reality of like, I exist in this room. Like, there's no way for me not to exist in this room. And so I can say I'm unbiased. I can say I don't influence what happens in our conversation today. Even if I was silent, I still would.
Yeah.
Like, I'm influencing it. Like, it just, judgment is present. We bring stuff into the room as therapists, as people. So I think, yeah, you can't say that. I understand why people say they don't want to be judgmental, because that's important.
Yeah.
But I also think it's hard to be.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible, but I hope you guys know what I mean.
It just removes, like I said, like the negative connotation with judgment, right?
Yeah,
And it's like
it's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that it happens. I think it's how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming from a place of curiosity and interest, not a place of like shaming or, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were talking a week ago, and you sent us this article, me and Manny both, which neither one of us read because we're really good at like doing like follow up with what we're doing
bullshitting all the time.
Yeah.
But you had sent us this article, and you'd said something about like the client as a guest, or is there anything can you say it better than what I'm saying it right now?
I don't know. You said it so well.
But the client is the guest, and we're the hosts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's narrative.
That's
like
it?
that's
Well,
not narrative,
no.
but like
But
you're saying in general, like what we're doing as like professionals, right?
Yeah. And I think to kind of elaborate a little bit on the idea of narrative, like it's a stance in the world. Like, so it's not just like your work as a therapist, it's like who you are as a human being. And so when you come across someone new, they are a guest in your space, in your life, in your existence. And so you have to be mindful of how do you host them? How do you welcome them? So in the context of therapy, when a client comes in, like you want a warm space. You want a space where they feel that they're wanted there, that they're embraced. And so I think it's just like if you were to have a guest over to your house, you know, you'd want it to be presentable. You want them to feel warm and welcome, and however your culture might express that. Like I think, you know, like whether you are offering them food or you're making sure, you know, that they're comfortable or sit down or, you know, take your shoes off, relax. Like it's just a huge piece of welcoming somebody into, whether it's in conversation, in therapy, whether it's just in your life. I like to throw parties too. So that's what I'm talking about too.
So you don't practice anymore, right?
Not currently.
And would you say you still live, I don't know, the narrative lifestyle, even though like in your daily interactions with people and in how you say it's a stance in the world, right?
Yeah. So that's actually stolen from Anne, who's an amazing therapist. She's the one who convinced me of that. So as I was making the decision to step away from actively working with clients, I was like, but I'm a narrative therapist. I'm a therapist. What does that mean? And she talked about that idea of like you exist in the world that way. So you come into the world, people you come across, warm, welcoming, and curious about who they are. And so that doesn't just happen in the therapy room. Am I that way all the time? I don't know. That's a good question. I think I was mentioning earlier, because I'm removed from the therapy world, there is a piece of me that I might be removed from to some degree of like that therapist part. And then every once in a while I get to have conversations with people about it and I'm like, oh, it's still there. Yeah. But it's got a little spider webs on it maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Being away, as you said, you're not actively in the field. You don't have to talk about why you stopped doing it or stepped away from it, but if you want to, you could, or you can even talk about like, what do you miss about it?
Yeah. I think I have to talk about why I stepped away in order to talk about what I miss about it. I think in my own experience, the mental health system is pretty flawed, and there's victims of those flaws. And so number one is clients for sure. Like that, they definitely suffer. People who are trying to get better suffer as a result of that. And when I say it's flawed, it's because, I don't know, like it's hard to access care. It's hard to find therapists that are motivated and driven to do the best work because maybe they're burnt out or, you know, like it's just, there's a lot that goes to the idea of it being flawed. But I think those flaws got the best of me. And so working in private practice, not feeling very supported. I started in private practice the 1st of February 2020. And then a month later, COVID, we all closed down.
Right.
And I was working with, I would say, really like a lot of like marginalized populations who were even more significantly impacted by COVID. And how do you tell somebody like it's going to be okay when no one's okay. Like none of us in the world were okay.
Right.
And so sitting in that space, I think in isolation just really took a toll on me. So I don't miss anything. No, that's not true at all. I think that there's a piece of that that's like, it just was really hard and I needed to take good care of myself. And so had to step away. But what I miss is the conversations.
Yeah.
What I miss is seeing how incredible people are. When you're out and about in daily life, like you can catch a glimpse here and there of somebody being incredible, but for the most part, you only see the surface. But when you're engaging in conversations with new people, oh my gosh, like the things the things that they're doing, the ways that they're fighting to improve their lives, the things that they've made it through, like it's just so inspiring. It's hard not to have faith in the world when you get to have rich conversations. Yeah, and I think in private practice, the conversations didn't get to be as rich for me because of the circumstance of the world.
Yeah, that's crazy. Would you say you were like burnt out?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like the definition of burnt out.
That's crazy. So whenever I talk to you, like even now, like I feel like you project this very like welcoming, sort of like kind, like I can feel your heart, I guess, when you talk. Yeah. And I look up to that because, there's times where I think about when I'm in private practice where it's like it's hard to sometimes stay that connected with clients. And I feel like, in the work you've done, we've been in supervision together, we've worked closely together. I feel like you always have that. So I can't even imagine you being burnt out. So in a way, it's a little bit reinforcing. Like, okay, cool, you get burnt. Danae gets burnt out too.
Yeah.
But I guess one of my questions is like, how do you feel like how do you work through that? I don't know, like through that burnout to stay your awesome self. Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm 2 years out from being in the field, like directly working with clients. And so I'm more in that place. I think if we were having this conversation a year and a half ago, like I don't think that part of me would have been as present, unfortunately. I think also too, like in the field, like as therapists, they say like self-care. Like, okay, I get that. Like, it is my responsibility to take good care of myself. But, like, it's also this reality of, like, people aren't talking about how flawed it is or how hard it is to be a therapist. Like, I don't know if this is okay to say. It's probably not going to sound nice. But, like, in the midst of the pandemic, it was, like, nurses, and don't get me wrong. Like, they absolutely needed the love and the care. But wasn't mental health professionals. Nobody was like, who's taking care of the therapist? And I don't, like, that's a terrible thing to say because I'm not saying that, like...
No, you're not, like, knocking that. I mean, they most definitely, like, there was the frontline workers. Yeah, like,
we were working through the pandemic.
We should edit that out.
No.
No.
No, we're good. Yeah. No, but it's true. It is true, though. Yeah.
No, you're right, though, because I worked in a system where I worked at a hospital.
Yeah.
And it was suggested, like, hey, frontline workers, I felt weird to be grouped into that because then there's this part of me like, well, I don't deserve that because I'm not sitting in a patient's room. Like, But then I also was like, well, they would say this self-care thing was going on, and I don't know. I felt like I was grouped in with it, but I don't think it was really like reflected on me personally. Like, I rolled my eyes when you said self-care because working in these systems, these programs, like they're always like, hey, self-care is very important, but it's not really practiced that way. And I don't want to say I don't want to use that word never been supported, but so often I don't feel like self-care is really provided the way that I feel like I try to tell the clients I work with.
Yeah, there's not a space to practice what you preach. Like you probably can find it, so don't get me wrong.
Right.
But when you are a part of some of those systems working for like agencies or things like that, like for some places, like you're barely making enough money to survive, and you don't get time off, you don't get those things. And so that space is not created to actually do the things that you would recommend your clients do.
It speaks to what you said earlier about like how the system's kind of broken, right?
Yeah.
Where for the clients, it's hard to find affordable care. It's hard to find people who are affordable and who are ready to take on a client right away.
Yeah.
For the therapists, I was on an insurance panel one time, and they pay you crap, right?
Yep.
And so it's hard to build a life of balance where you implement the self-care
Yep.
while still being able to maintain
Yeah.
your living and take care of your family and your
Yeah.
kids. So
Yeah.
I'm sad to hear like you were so burned out, but no, but I
know.
you know, here's the thing, like I have people often say to me like, do you actually, no, I don't think I have people have say this to me. I a lot of times I think about the burnout, and there's this sense for me, and maybe this is like my ego and reputation of like, I'm not going to get burned out. I'm going to keep working through it. But to take a step back like you've done and to really like assess and go, hey, I don't think this is good for me right now. For me, it's encouraging. It shines a light on it. I guess it's just like, do you feel like a lot of people that you've interacted with in the field, therapists, counselors, whatever, do you feel like, do you see a lot more burnout now? Like you can kind of reflect and go, okay, like there is a lot of it going on, but are we just accustomed to just working through it because this is what we do, or we practice, I don't know, or we preach to people that we work with, like getting through the negatives and seeing the positives, or I don't know. Is it this like distorted message in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
I think it is a distorted message. And I think, there is this idea of like, I don't know, like people sometimes call therapists like healers or like holders of hope. And like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that don't have hope and I'm holding hope for them, but I have to stay positive. I have to like be that because they're in such a tough place. Like I'm not necessarily answering your question, but
No, I think you are. I mean, I don't know if there is a definitive answer though.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there are people who do it though. There are people who find their way and keep doing this work and do it really well.
Yeah.
There's probably a secret there. I don't have it.
Yeah. Oh shit, you got to leave. Right? No, I'm just kidding.
Obviously.
What I appreciate most about this conversation is when we were like planning what we were going to talk about, one of the things that came up is I think like the therapist, what was it? The person behind the therapist, right?
Yeah.
And I think like it's kind of nice because we get to reveal a little bit about that, like some of the stuff that we think about, we struggle with, we stress out about, that maybe our clients don't get to see sometimes, right? And yeah, or even people expect us to be a certain way when we're just kind of human and,
totally.
and have our uniqueness. You know, one thing that comes to mind, I remember you, when we worked together, you used to write clients letters.
Yeah.
Or right, you used to buy cards like out of your money and write them.
Is she still from the company?
No, I didn't even know how to do like a reimbursement thing ever. That's new. I just learned that.
Yeah, and
Dollar Tree cards, but still.
Exactly. But I thought that was so thoughtful. Like, and it's part of, you know, everything that I've shared earlier, like how with the things that I admire as a therapist, for you as a therapist. But tell us about that, like, because I feel like what was the intention behind that, or like how did that even come about, that idea? I feel like it's so creative.
Yeah, so I think there's like a couple directions that answer can go in. Like one, I think that is a narrative piece. So when you look at some of the work of narrative therapists, in between sessions, they're writing their clients or having their clients write them, or connecting their clients to each other in, of course, a confidential way, but finding a community. So you're creating community, you're creating continuity between sessions. And so trying to reflect on some of I know there's like narrative examples, but I think the intention of writing those cards, sometimes it was a reflection of something from our session. Maybe I didn't get the opportunity in session to say, hey, that's amazing, or that really stands out to me. And so sometimes it would be a quick note, like, I was reflecting on our conversation. You mentioned da-da-da-da-da, and like, do you realize, what does that mean to you? This is what it means to me. I'm seeing it in this light. I'm curious if you see it that way. So part of it was to kind of strengthen the conversation that we didn't get to have in the moment. I often wrote goodbye letters, like as somebody would graduate from a program or terminate from therapy. And that was, again, like a summary of the work that we've done. Yeah. I think the thing about change is we don't know it's happening until it's happened. And so in the midst of all those conversations, they're changing and they're growing, but then to at the end be able to be like, this is where you started and you talked about this experience and now you're all the way over here.
Wow, yeah. You like solidify that moment of change. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something powerful in in language, like we create, I don't know, pathways, if that's the right way to say it, but like as we tell stories, as we reinforce things, they stick in our brain in different ways.
How when you were talking about writing a letter or a note to someone about something you thought about, I put myself in the shoe of a client,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what a cool feeling to know that your therapist was thinking about you, right? Like to know that they thought about you, I don't know, outside of session. It's not just those 50 minutes, but
No. Yeah.
like what an awesome impression that could have on a client to know that they matter that much, right? To you.
Yeah.
I think that's also to like the idea of like, clients really don't understand, or maybe I don't know. I couldn't go into their brain. It's just how much they impact us and how much they make. For the longest time working in this field, it was so often it was hard for me to like leave things behind. If I were to walk out on a Friday afternoon, I carried so much of them with me. Throughout time, I've gotten better with it. I don't know if it's become desensitized or detached. I'm not exactly sure if it's good, or I think it's good overall that I could like not worry about so much about them. But I still, though, like if I look back at the clients I initially worked with, there's such an influence on like what I do. I still quote people that I've like. I had a client from Hawaii, and he had like a history in like gangs, and he was very confrontational. And I remember when I was running a group with him, one of the first times I had a group with him, I used to stand like this. You can't really see me, but like I'd posture up and I'd stand in group. And I remember like weeks after like I did that, and he didn't pull me aside, but he's in front of everybody. He's like, Jesse, I wanted to whoop your ass the first time I met you, because in some ways, me standing over him, posturing over him, there was this like me almost seeming like I was better than me, and culturally and all that stuff. I still think about that when I stand up in a group now. So could we talk on just a little bit the idea of like how clients impact us and what the significant impact they've had on our presentation throughout this whole process?
And that client.
Yeah.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Right.
It's kind of, I mean, you know, there's the obvious, or like we think about our clients because we have to treatment plan. We have to talk about like how we're helping them, what strategies we're going to use, I guess, right? But then there's like the really deep sort of like when you're not intentionally trying to think about them or plan for a session, and it's like you're, I don't know, out on a road trip and the song reminds you of them, or like, you know, like that. I almost, do you guys think that's important for them to know though, like that happens? I feel like it kind of is, like it in terms of building a relationship with them, but I don't know if
I was just gonna say how you carry them. Like that's what comes to my mind of like, like we can't deny that we carry the worry of like, will this person be okay? What's going to happen? I'm concerned for them. But also how we carry them, the things we think about.
Yeah.
Like it's not just those hopeless moments. It's also this piece of like, you know, this client came in this place where they didn't think they could make it one day.
Yeah.
And I heard from the client, you know, like 5 years later, like an email like, hey, I'm kind of struggling, but I'm doing way better than when we met. Like, I'm still not perfect. Like, okay, great. That's expected. But like how you carry their courage or their strength, their resilience, their hope for life. I'm thinking about one that I can't describe this particular person, but we had a conversation about like when you get your first apartment, because this person had like, there was just nothing. What are you going to do? I'm going to paint it all black.
Wow.
All of it? Yes, every single wall will be black, and I'll probably get a black cat. And just funny, like, you know, like sometimes that'll pop into your head of like, I don't know, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember that conversation, and I wonder if he made it there, if he got to that place, you know. So
I love that.
Like how we carry their possibilities and their hopes and their dreams. It's not just their pain. Maybe that's kind of a bit of the burnout piece of how do we also carry like the beauty of their lives.
Yeah, our clients, like, it made me think about a conversation I had with a client where like we were talking about something completely different, helping them about something different, and they brought a way that they parented that I thought was so cool, and it was just it was irrelevant to like our discussion, but I was like, wait, so it made me think, I'm like, I want to do that, like, so there's this aspect with our clients that they have strength, they have positives, they you know, and sometimes, you know, they even help us like find ways for us to live a better life or do better, function
course.
through the world in a better way because of something they tell us or something
Yep.
we connect with them on, which I think is super cool. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, like clients.
Yeah.
I think to your point though, like how do we let them know?
Yeah.
The thing is, unless we stay that, we don't get that opportunity. And then I guess kind of like to Danae's point, like we just kind of carry on our experiences. But yeah, I think that's unfortunately like this story that I tell right now of that one individual. Like I don't know where he's at in the world. I guess one thing I try to just present day what works for me a lot, so I don't get sucked into this idea of like things maybe aren't going so well, or just even get into a dark headspace. But like the idea that that person is out there and they're living their life, and I got to be a part of it. And I think that's probably important for any client that I work with moving forward. Is like I won't be able to say this to them. Maybe I try to say it more and suggest it. I do actually. Now that I think about it, there are times I say like, you impact my life right now, like you relevance, and like you realize like, yeah, you impact everybody that you interact with, and sometimes that one little thing can give them, I hope, some hope and realizing that they are important, they are loved, they are appreciated. So, and that's but it's hard to like say how much like in 4 years I'm gonna think about this song by the Spice Girls, and it's gonna make me think about you. So.
I love that.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think too, like, to go back to the letter question, I know that was a while back, but part of that like final letter is like, this is how I will carry you. Like, because I don't, and it's so funny because I was watching Shrinking on Apple TV. I watched the first episode before this. I had to prepare,
Yeah.
And I was laughing because I think there is this piece of like, we want to be human. I do, I guess, in the room with my clients. I want to be human. I want to show that I have feelings, emotions, I connect with them. I don't want to be unethical, so I don't want to go to kind of the extreme of like that show, but just the importance of like, you're shaping who I am. Yeah. Like I'm still me. I'm still okay when you share these stories with me. I'm going to go out into the world and be okay, but you will have left an imprint on me. Maybe small, maybe big, but like you just do. It's just they're such intimate conversations. How can they not?
Right.
I mean, this is why we're doing the podcast here. I'm a sponge, and I'm just like taking it all in. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Maybe I will go to Pizza Port if you're going with.
Yeah, thank you.
The pressure.
Please be my friend, Jesse.
All right,
cool.
thanks.
Wrap this up.